All right, in this video, we're going to talk about loops. Loops are a very, very useful means of creating modular animation or animation that's just alive, like literally looping forever. If we go on the internet and look through our feeds, there's often looping animation, or there'll be loops that's a component of a bigger piece. So let's talk about them next. So there's a few. Some of it's, I guess, pretty straightforward, but some of it you wouldn't necessarily know unless somebody showed you. So let's just start. I have my shape here, and I'm going to make a rectangle a little smaller. Well, maybe just a white rectangle. I'm looking at long. All right, so let's animate this in a loop. So I'm going to hit R for rotation, set a keyframe, and then in 2 seconds, we'll spin it once. Let's see. All right, that's about a good speed. So we'll say this will be a 2-second loop. So to navigate between individual frames, you can hit Function and then the up and down arrow on the keyboard. So if I wanted this to be exactly 2 seconds and I moved my time indicator or my playhead or whatever to there and set my out and then trim the comp to that, the composition is actually 2 seconds and 1 frame long, right? And that's because by default, the timeline starts at 0, right? So 0 to 23 would give you 24 numbers. We don't start counting from 1. We start counting from 0. So if we want something to be actually 2 seconds long, we move our time indicator 1 frame before the second, set our out, and then trim to that. So let's let this rip here. So it looks pretty good, but if you pay attention, there's a little something weird. So every time it gets to the end, there's like a little sticking point. And this is the thing I wanted to point out about setting up loops. What's happening is the first frame and the last frame are identical. And that means that you're seeing every frame. If I step through this, right? Let's see, function down there. Every single frame is unique, right? There's a slightly different rotation of the cylinder, but then the first and the last frame are the same, and that creates a little stick. And that's like something that's kind of like the mark of somebody who's just kind of learning how to set up loops on the computer. So now, if I move it one frame past, that means the loop kind of starts over again on that first frame, and you have a seamless loop. Okay, so 2 things. One, we start counting at 0. So 0 to 23 would be 24 frames per second. And the other thing is you don't want to double up the looping frame. So, all else being equal, you want your loop to be invisible. Like you can't really tell where the loop begins and ends. And I think this rotating thing like does a pretty good job with that. You can't really tell. So what that means is you tend to want to avoid ping-ponging motion. And so let me just set up a little ping-ponging motion here. We have this path, which is just 2 points, and we're going to animate a trim path here. And let's see here. How about animate the end? That will be the peak. And then we'll do 0 at the beginning. All right, so up, down. Now this is like the classic example of ping-ponging motion. I mean, it's not the end of the world, but there's usually something better. So we could, of course, add some eases to this to make it a little nicer. Like, and now it's oscillating, and oscillating motion could be nice. But often it is preferable to do something like this. So let's say it wipes on to there. I'll make this, I'm gonna get rid of that. And then we'll wipe it off. So this will be our loop. And what this does is it keeps the momentum going. It's you're a little bit less aware of it looping back and forth. It has continuous motion, and of course we could make this a little nicer. It's also kind of nice to overlap the beginning and end to kind of smooth that transition out a bit. But in general, these kind of continuous moving loops, especially in something that's more design focused, like graphic shapes and forms, tend to be preferable to oscillations, or at least you should be aware of them. Another example of this is, let's say, so that's a path, just moving along a path. What if we had a circle? Let's just hide this for a bit, and we'll make a circle right in the middle of the screen here. Oops, circle. So we can do the same thing. This one we'll do with the scale, 0, and then back 0. And I can smooth it out. But that's another ping pong. I mean, it's got like a breathing thing, but if we want continuous motion, kind of unaware of the loop, what we could do is before the circle reaches its peak, we could have another circle that brings it off again. Right? It's like a ripple in the water. It's like continues to come at us. All right. So that's just something to think about as we're making loops. This kind of continuous motion. All right. So another key skill or key thing to think about when we're doing looping is what you do in scenarios where you have to have the loop continue maybe several cycles within a bigger piece. So what I mean by that is, okay, so we have this perfect spin set up that's every 2 seconds. But what if this was in a bigger piece that was exactly 10 seconds long? Now what we could do, I guess, is you know, have a keyframe here that's 0 again, or I don't know. It would be a total pain. So what we could do instead is tell After Effects what you want to do after the last keyframe. And to do that, we need to use an expression. It's a little convoluted and idiosyncratic to After Effects, but it's not too bad. And in Canvas, in Notion, I have a link to the documentation. But basically how it works is if I right-click on this thing, I can make an expression. And what the syntax is loop out, open parentheses, type equals cycle. But there's a few different ones, but we'll look at them. So now what should happen, semicolon, enter. Sorry, type equals open quotes. Cycle. There we go. I think it's going to be happy. Yay, it's happy. Okay, and we know it's happy because it turned red. So now what should happen is after the last frame, it's going to keep going. It's going to cycle these animations. And if I turn it off, otherwise it just stops. Okay, and so yeah, we could make our timeline 2 seconds long, but what if you're looping things within a bigger timeline? What do, right? You need these expressions. And you can cycle, and then you could also do the ping pong thing, right? Ping pong. Enter. I guess I'm spelling it wrong. So, you know, where am I getting this stuff from? So if we go over here, and I keep screwing up, but if we go to our little reference, go to the little expression page, and then on this page, I'm just loop out. Oh, sorry, we do Command F, loop out. And ping pong. Okay, it's all one word. Ping pong. And now what should happen is it's going to go and then go backwards, right? Ping pong emotion. We don't like ping pong emotion. Well, unless we have a good reason for it. Okay. Another thing you could do, which is going to look exactly the same as cycle for this particular scenario, is continue. So let's go back to cycle for a second. Type equals cycle. All right. Enter. All right. So what's going to happen? So it goes all the way, and then it's to 1, and then it starts over. I could also do continue, and it's going to look the same, but it's going to be something slightly different. And how continue works is it's just going to take whatever that value is and keep going. It's going to take the slope of the number and keep going. So now it's just adding rotations to it. So cycle goes back to the first keyframe in your set, where continue takes the angle coming out of the last keyframe and goes on and on forever. So the expression thing's a little bit of a pain, but it is very, very handy if you're playing with loops.